plan is entitled How to Establish a Fascist Dictatorship in the United States. The criterion will, of course, be standard net benefits, because we presuppose utilitarianism, that is to say, to have the greatest good for the greatest number of people, to be really primary, and we will be willing to use whatever means necessary to justify what is obviously so ubiquitously the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Because, we know that. We know that because we can predict it. We can have 100% certainty of what is the good based upon scientific technology and what we are basically told by Richard Dawkins and his genetic theory of morality. How will we be implementing this plan? Well, step one is you have to turn the United States into an empire. That is to say that merely having closed borders and an independent economy is not enough. We have to establish not only trade relations with consenting countries, but we also have to infiltrate countries abroad, developing countries, through doing business with their corrupt governments. This will effectively put them in a situation where they are disadvantaged, and we will basically systematically interfere with the capacity for these countries to elect a democratic president, either by sending what is called an economic hitman, or by sending CIA jackals. Going on, we will also follow in the words and the footsteps of what Aldous Huxley said once to George Orwell, that you can do everything with bayonets but sit on them. That is to say, we will earn the consent of the ruled. How we will do this will be by, first of all, creating a system of paranoia engendered by an essentially bought-out media enterprise, which is becoming more and more and more of a conglomerate that presents the same basic dogmatic propaganda under different auspices and different names. This is easy to do within a capitalist society, where basically, if you have enough money as a corporation, you can incentivize another corporation to join forces with you and maximize profit. This is intrinsic to the capitalist system, which was why Benito Mussolini, our hero, suggested that capitalism will inevitably lead not to something like communism, which we're not going to even consider as an option, but something like fascism. The way that we will incentivize people to conform is, first of all, by de-intellectualizing. That is to say, media and entertainment must, at first, be as superficial as possible. This will create a culture of arbitrariness and emotivism, and it will encourage the wealthy to continue to work in our favor. It will demoralize the poor, who we will disincentivize from even trying to participate in society by publishing statistics about how unlikely they will be ever to succeed. And it will keep the middle class quiet and still, in the words of the Primitive Radio Gods band. This is just the step one, though. Step two will be that we engender, like I said, an environment of paranoia. This will be fairly easy to do. All we need to do is buy out, basically, a few of the members of a local police department. We can give them false information or something. Create a scandal wherein someone innocent is killed, and then we mythologize it by insisting that this is actually motivated by race. Now, I know that many of you don't remember what race is because we've been living in a post-racial age, but there was a time when this concept, this mind virus, was actually ostensibly very prevalent. We can bring it back by convincing people that it never left. This is the great irony of the media, because, as we all know, only a minority of the population, an incredible minority of this population certainly, has caught on to the fact that media doesn't refer to reality. It only refers to other media. But this is because the process of reporting media creates events. It does create reality. It just never fully represents it. So, we will incite riots, and we'll know that people will be motivated to follow us. Why? Quite simple. It will be the right thing to do. I mean, a propaganda slogan never looks benevolent, does it? Saying something like, windows falling from buildings and scratching up innocent bystanders on their descent is just a bit too wordy. We would much prefer something like Black Lives Matter, which will also reinforce the notion that a black life is distinct from a white life or a brown life and something of that nature, and will create racial hostility, especially among uneducated people who are more than willing to join a herd of protesters. Next step, create an enemy. This is something which Orwell got right and which Huxley commended him for. You see, we've already established that developing countries will be of tremendous use to us. So what do we do with developing countries then? The thing to be done with developing countries is to recognize that the hostility that the people feel towards our empire is actually also evil. Because you see, as Jung posited, as well as von Franz and Woodman and other great psychologists, it isn't just on an individual level that we project the evil within ourselves. Not to say that there isn't evil out there in the world that you can't observe objectively, but we sometimes are just so prone, when we're so great, to project the evil in ourselves onto another person. No, this also happens nationally and internationally. But it's very hard to do this in the way that it's been done before with Russia in the Cold War, or with Nazi Germany, where fascism was actually happening. Because Russia is actually going to work with us, as is Germany. They're very strong. Now, we want to exploit the weak. So what do? We treat them as though they are a nation, and they intend to be a nation. We might even convince them that they are a nation. And this way, we'll create the perfect threat. We'll be able to set up, through our media, a system according to which it looks like every terrible thing that ever happens in the world is not our fault, A, and is B, the fault of some other. And we'll just hope that people in the United States will not recognize the fact that most groups who are radical enemy groups are, first of all, not very well organized traditionally, and have always had names that were in the given language of the people that they were seeking to recruit, not in the language of the people that they were seeking to subvert, not an English name turned into an acronym, which would ostensibly, of course, give away that the origin of this English name and the acronym itself was intended for our Western audiences because it originated within us, and that no such organization ever existed. The final stretch is the government. As we all know, One of the problems with democracy is that sometimes the people don't want democracy anymore. So, in the words of Mussolini, fascism is best described as corporatism, because it's a merging of corporate and state power. We'll set up a ruse of a presidential election where the only real candidates that will ultimately be in the running will be a CEO and a woman. You may be familiar with the name Leni Riefenstahl. She was an excellent figurehead for women's rights as early on as in 1937. And in a country as troubled as Germany, she was already a director of films. And it was perfect for the Germany of her time. And she got away with it, despite it being Nazi propaganda, because she was a woman. And we all know that women deserve equal rights.